All right, it's always game day in Buffalo, and it is almost free agency season. Neither of us are going to be free agents any that I know of, Matt, but some Buffalo Bills certainly are starting on Monday when they could talk with other teams, and then on Wednesday when they could sign with other teams. And of course, the reverse is true. The Bills can start talking with players on Monday. They can talk with their agents, actually, not the players themselves, and then sign players on Wednesday. They call it the legal tampering period. I'm not sure if you like that term or not.
It seems like it makes it sound like more scandalous than it actually is, the legal tampering period. Why can't they just actually start free agency on Monday and just say,
Wow.
okay, you can start having conversation? Like, why don't they just do that?
I think what happened was for many years, that's what they did. And teams were signing guys. Let's say free agency started at 4 p.m. on Monday, right?
Mhm.
Teams were signing guys at like 4:02 p.m. And they're like, there's no way you just negotiated that kind of a deal in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So there was kind of this unspoken thing that there had already conversations. So the league said, let's just eliminate kind of the ambiguity here and say you can start talking 2 days before. And that way, as soon as it starts, you can sign the deal and everybody knows you've been talking, but you can't talk to the player or have the player visit in any capacity. Only the agents can talk with the teams. It was kind of a way to make it so that everyone knew that, yeah, we all know there was tampering going on,
Mhm.
but now we'll make it legal for 2 days and you can start doing that.
Yeah, I just feel like why even put in that portion? I understand what you're saying on the back end, but regardless, tomorrow, Monday, we're recording this on Sunday
Yep.
evening while I've got the Oscars on in the background. There's going to be deals that get announced within minutes. So there's already tampering happening before the legal tampering period. It's going to be 12:04 and it'll be like, "Oh,
Well,
this team
well,
has
4
agreed to
o'clock.
terms."
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
12
4
o'clock. You mean Monday. Monday. You wait,
Monday.
you think there will be deals announced that early on Monday? I don't know.
I mean,
Traditionally, I
maybe
don't know if there is that quickly. You know what I mean?
maybe
But you're
not
right. It'll
that
probably be pretty
early,
soon.
but within a couple hours, like there will be
Probably right.
guys who have agreed to terms
Yep.
with contracts and whatever team they're going to. I think that there might be more news on Monday and Tuesday than there is on Wednesday in the 2 days leading up to
Probably right.
the actual
Yeah,
free
it does
agency.
kind of sour the actual free agency deadline a little bit because you already know, what's happening.
Mhm.
And then you might find out that there's a trade that can't be executed until Wednesday at 4 p.m. So Monday at noon is when the legal tampering period begins. Wednesday at 4 p.m. is when teams Eastern time is when teams can actually sign free agents. Before I get into all that, before I forget, you have an iPhone, right? Yeah, I know you do
Yeah.
because when I text you, it's blue, and when you text me, it's
Yeah.
blue. Right? So we know each other. Are you like straight up Apple guy, or are you all Apple products?
Not
Personal
all.
life, not necessarily work.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Mac. Like, I'm on a MacBook right now. Also, by the way, if you are watching the video and it's a little choppy, we were troubleshooting this before we started recording, and we can't figure it out right now. We're both by our routers, and we tried to restart our computers. So, if you're a tech wizard, shoot us a comment. But yeah, no, I'm an Apple guy for the only thing that I guess I don't have the Apple Vision Pro. I don't
Oh,
have $3,500 lying
right,
around
right,
for
right.
those goggles.
Well,
But
it's
no,
funny you say that.
I've got a MacBook that I'm using right now, and then I've got another MacBook at
Okay, well,
upstairs.
here's why I ask, and by the way, you look great to me. So maybe I mean, I don't know how it's going to turn out. This is going to be a mystery how it's going to turn out.
Yeah.
You're not choppy, I'm not choppy, but we'll see what happens when you watch the video at the South Sports YouTube page. Okay, the reason I ask is, it's funny you say that. Actually, I don't have a Vision. Uh, what is it? Apple Vision.
Apple Vision Pro. They're the new
Is it right?
like
Yep.
goggles. They're insane.
I do have a MetaQuest though. We do have VR MetaQuest. We have that at my house.
Okay.
But I don't have that. The reason I ask you is I have had the same MacBook. I have a Air, okay, MacBook
Mhm.
Air. I've had the same one that I'm using right now to talk to you. Right here, you for 7 years. It's
Mhm.
fine. I have no problem with it. I'm an Apple guy, but it's 7 years old, and I kind of need an upgrade with some different things I'm doing and functionality and storage and all the different stuff that we do here. So we went to buy a new laptop today. Like I went to
Mhm.
the Apple store today to buy a new laptop. I mean, it's like buying a new car, not because of the price. Yes, it is expensive, but all the different things you have to think about. And I'm like, I don't know. What's the difference between CPU and GPU and the core processor? And what if I want to do this? And what if I want to do that? And then the color and the size of the screen. And it's a lot to take in, man.
Yeah, it is a lot to take in, but it's also something that is so dependent on the person that's using it. If you're not
Mhm.
somebody who's editing video and storing massive files on your computer, you can totally get away with a MacBook Air that doesn't have a huge hard drive, that doesn't have all the bells and whistles. That's like what they don't even do 13 inches anymore, right? Now it's 12 and
No,
14. It's not
no, I
13
got
and
I got
15.
I got a 13.
13. Did you get a Pro or an Air?
So the Pro is only 13. I'm sorry, the Air. I got an Air, and I'll tell you why in a
Hmm.
second. The Air is 13 or 15. The
Hmm.
Pro is 14 or 16 now.
Okay.
Okay, so you can only have that choice. I wound up getting the Air because I agree with you. Of all the things we do in media, the Pro is probably better, but I don't store my videos. I put them on YouTube. They live there. I can delete them off my computer. So I don't have
Yeah.
to have all that storage. And then if I want, now I've never, I did not buy Final Cut. Final Cut is the editing service, but all
Yes.
MacBooks come with iMovie. It's the
Hmm.
scaled down basic version, but you can also get Final Cut later, but it also adds to the price. That's the other thing. Apple products are very expensive. We know that. And then you got to buy this on top of that. If you're going to get this new computer, you got to get this because now the ports are different. And I didn't know this. I had to get I knew it when I bought it, but when I went there, I didn't realize the ports are different. They change them up. Every time it's a new phone or a new computer, they change the ports because they want you to get the things that are compatible with those ports.
Yeah. I know. It's USB-C. I have
Yes.
456 gigs of stuff on my computer right now. So we're the
Oh,
exact
what's your
opposite.
storage?
500. So I'm pushing it. I always have to. But like I have a file on my folder that's just Bill's 2023 season, and it's a bunch of stuff from the
Yeah.
2023 season. And then I have a
Will
Sabres
you get rid of it at
folder.
all?
Well, I'll put it onto an external hard drive once the season is done, but I still need some of this video at this point, so I keep it on here for right now. But once we get to a point where things quiet down, I'll put everything on an external hard drive, and that's how I have,
Okay.
the years and years of Bill's video and stuff. But yeah, no, I didn't expect to be talking about this today, but maybe Sal, you're becoming a tech guy.
No, it's just I understand enough for what I need, but it is interesting to me that I did wind up buying one with over 500 gigs, but on this one I use, believe it or not, I'm only using 58 gigs of 121 that I have. So it's not like I use a lot.
I would
So air is good, I think.
I would
Right?
say I use 50 gigs in a standard week of an NFL season on the video that I'm uploading to my laptop.
When will you scrub it?
Um, well, a lot of it happens on airplanes when I'm like sitting on a flight going to a game. I will
Right.
delete my stuff from weeks prior that I don't need, but I always like to be backlogged at least on my actual laptop for a couple weeks. Like I can put everything into our internal system back at work in our database and our storage system, but I want to have access. So if the Bills are playing, the Chiefs in the previous game is the Eagles game. I want to make sure that I have all the video from the Eagles game and the video from the game before that in case it's anything. And then I've just got standard stuff that's always ready to go. Sean McDermott file, Brandon Bean file,
Yeah.
Josh Allen file, all that stuff kind of ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, you need it more for what you do in TV than I do, but I did have to look into a lot of this. It is just it's a little bit nerve-wracking and little anxiety because I'm like, I don't know if I'm getting the right thing. And then you have to deal with the color. Oh, this silver's better than that. And I can see my
Mm-hmm.
fingerprints on this one. I like this color, but it's not good. What about it's just a lot of different things. So I did buy one today. I'm very happy about it. And after this show, like tonight, I'll start to kind of get into it. And next time you see me, I'll probably have it. In the meantime, the next time we see each other, Matt, the Bills will look quite different, obviously. I mean, they head into free agency here. They have 19 now, 19 pending unrestricted free agents. Before we get into what's going to happen, let's talk a little bit about what has happened. No real surprise. They brought Quentin Morris back. He was an exclusive rights free agent. The team just had to offer him the minimum salary. They just basically signed him to a 1-year deal. It's the same thing. Just kind of bypass the system, bypass
Mm-hmm.
that process. All right. Taylor Rapp comes back though. Taylor Rapp comes back after we talked about the guys getting released that we talked about. We now know the numbers on it. It seems like it's a pretty decent deal overall, 14 million he can make, but really, Matt, I mean, most of it, I think some of it's incentives. I don't think it screams starting safety money, but at this point, I do expect him to probably be penciled in as one of the starting safeties.
Yeah, I would think so. It's not backup money, but it's not starter money. It's somewhere in between. So they could kind of go in either direction there. I think it's going to be a situation where he's expected to be the starter unless somebody outperforms him in training camp. And then because of the money he's making, they're totally fine keeping him to be a depth piece or somebody that they try and utilize in some of the ways that they did this past season. I think the money, and this is a reminder for anybody who's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, I tweet it every single year, and you all know it by now. But when a deal initially gets announced, it's always coming from the agent. The money is going to be all the way maxed out. So if you see Gabe Davis sign a 3-year, $60 million contract, that does not mean that he's definitely getting $20 million a year. It means that there's a ton of incentives and a ton of performance bonuses that are built into that number. And then as the days go by, you will actually find out within. It's the same thing. We obviously saw it happen with Taylor Rapp. It's the same thing that happened with Mitch Trubisky. The numbers get announced as, I think, almost $9 million. And then it's like, well, it's really like 2.5 a year. And it's kind of middle of the road backup quarterback money. So those have been the two things that have happened notably, right? Since we spoke last, we talked about them on the pod as it sounded like they were going to happen. Are we missing anything? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happened around the league. Chris Jones, Baker Mayfield, some of the, really big decisions, but I don't think anything else specifically with the Bills.
No, Taylor Rapp, by the way, according to Spot Track, Taylor Rapp's cap hits, very livable, I think. 2.8 this year, 3.7 next year, $4 million, but very also a contract that you can kind of get out of if he doesn't perform the way you hope and expect. So I think this turned out okay for the Bills to, have a guy that we're comfortable with him. Maybe they can still go shopping if they want as far as safety. I do want to revisit Trubisky before we move into more stuff. You brought him up and kudos to you a while ago, but what about just the fit and the surprise level? Like Trubisky, coming back to Buffalo after going to Pittsburgh and not performing very well. What's your overall thought of the fit with Mitch Trubisky compared to where they've been with the quarterback position over the last few years, backup quarterback position?
I feel like Mitch Trubisky, if needed, gives you a better chance to win a game or a couple games than Kyle Allen would have. I also don't necessarily think this is going to completely rule out a chance that Kyle Allen returns to the Bills. I think Kyle Allen could return to the Bills and kind of be their third quarterback and maybe their practice squad guy if they still like him enough for that role. I mean, it's kind of what they did with Matt Barkley for the last several years, where they had a guy who they liked enough, but just kind of stowed them on their practice squad. I just think Mitch Trubisky's play style fits a little bit more of what the Bills offense wants to be. And if that's, a break glass in case of emergency situation, you've got a guy who you don't need to completely water down the playbook for. You've got a guy who cannot do the same things as Josh Allen, but can do the diet version of those things for, I guess, what Josh Allen can do.
Yeah, you mentioned it, some moves around the league, and obviously some more are going to be happening. So let's start diving into where the Bills fit in all of this. Sal Capaccio, Matt Bove, it's always game day in Buffalo. Thanks a lot for being with us here on whatever platform you listen to us, podcasting wise or the video stream at Sal Sports YouTube page, where you can always find us. All right. First, let's start with Jerry Jeudy going to Cleveland. Now, this was a guy that maybe Bills fans thought that they could target him and get in a trade. Jerry Jeudy goes to Cleveland, helps out their wide receiver core a little bit. Is that something you think the Bills should have been in on him, whether we know or they're not? They were or they weren't. Jerry Jeudy, maybe a fit in Buffalo if that could have been the case.
I mean, for what the cost was, I don't think it would have been a bad. I wouldn't have sat here and said I don't like the move, because I don't think, the Bills have 11 picks right now. It's a very marginal cost that they paid to get Jerry Jeudy, but it also makes me want to see the Bills do a move like that for a different player. And the one that I really like the idea of, which might be a little bit too far-fetched, is Deontay Johnson. So also talking about an AFC North wide receiver who has had his name thrown in trade conversations and rumors for the last several years. I just think that guy can play. I think we saw that guy make plays in the playoff game a couple months ago against the Bills. And as a secondary option or a third option, depending on what they do in the draft, I think he could be a really nice piece for the Bills. So this is definitely something I'm interested in. Another name is Courtland Sutton, once again in Denver. I don't think that they'll cut him because they just got rid of Jerry Jeudy, unless they really are just wiping the slate completely clean. But he's another name that I think, if that's what they end up doing, if they cut him, I think that that's worth something to look into. I don't know if I would give up a draft pick because the cap hit is still somewhat significant, but for a couple of years, why not?
Yeah, the cap hit $13 million about for each of them, and I guess the question would be then, would you rather have one of them at 13 million or Gabe Davis maybe the cap hit of 10 if you figure that out? Like, I think that really is kind of where you have to draw the line or think about this.
I just don't think Gabe is going to get. I think Gabe's contract is going to be big. I really do. I mean, I think that Calvin Ridley is going to get the most money for the guys that are probably on the open market, and then it might be Gabe. I mean, am I missing anybody else who might be in that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, who are the guys? Who are the other wide receivers? I mean, unless you're going to go with a Darnell Mooney or a Curtis Samuel, doesn't feel like maybe they get more necessarily, right?
Yeah, no, I just think that Gabe Davis, somebody is going to see the production, somebody's going to see the touchdowns, and they're also going to see the age. And they're going to say, okay, we think this can be somebody that we build around for the next 4, 5, 6 years, whatever, 5 years, whatever it is. I just think that he'll end up getting a pretty big contract somewhere. And I just don't think it's realistic that the Bills can afford him. Even with the moves that they've made and the maneuvering they've made, I just don't see how they could get him back.
I'm looking at the free agent wide receivers. I mean, I agree with you. He's going to be up there, but who are some? Oh, Marquise Brown. But that's probably more of a short deal.
Hollywood Brown. I forgot about him.
Yeah, but that's probably. And then Michael Thomas is out there now, right? Odell, Tyler Boyd. There's a few guys. You're right. It's probably looking more like Gabe is falling in the higher end now after everything we've seen from other guys staying where they are.
Yeah, well, with the salary cap going up too, it's going to do a couple different things. It's going to make those contracts bigger, but it's also going to, well, I don't know. I don't want to say that because I don't want to set like a number too high, but I'm really going into this expecting that Gabe gets close to 15. Is that crazy?
Wow. No, here's what I'm going to tell you. I think what you said earlier is right. The initial numbers will sound like that, but it won't quite be that. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm thinking that the initial numbers sound even bigger. I just keep thinking back to this class was supposed to be pretty full, and then all of the top guys basically ended up going back. I think there's going to be a team that, even though they're very different players, there's going to be a team that really loves the idea of Calvin Ridley, but then ends up missing out on him. And then they go, okay, well, what else can we do? We can go get Gabe Davis. I mean, Jacoby Myers last year got what, like $11 million or something? I know this is a completely different. I think that people will pay Gabe Davis notably more than Jacoby Myers. Even though I think Jacoby Myers is a really good football player, Gabe Davis in big games has played really well, and I think teams will fall in love with that. He's also a captain. He was on a really good team. Like all of these things that people, 100%. Front office guys will be like, yes, yes, yes. These are all the things that they want.
All right. So speaking of that, let's stay on this because you actually threw out a question on X at Matt_Bove at Sal Sports. You said, which player on this list, Bills UFAs, Penn UFAs, do you think is the most likely to return? And which player is the least likely? Have you kind of scrolled through your responses to get a consensus?
Yeah, there's a consensus kind of top 3. Ty Johnson is one of the ones that is very often mentioned, which I get. Like Ty Johnson, I think is coming back too, but I would say that's a very marginal signing for the Bills. That's going to be $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever it is. The next most often brought, the next one that got mentioned a lot were, I would say, a tie between 2 guys, and they're Daquan Jones and they're Cam Lewis. And I think that both of those are spot on. I just think that people think Cam Lewis is definitely going to happen. I would be surprised if it didn't happen. I think all 3 of those guys that I mentioned would have been the top 3 guys that I would have said too. Not top 3 most important to bring back, but the 3 likeliest that were going to come back. And the least likely to come back were almost all Gabe because of what we just talked about. I think everybody realizes that he is going to get paid a lot somewhere.
Really interesting. I mean, least likely. I could go the very, very easy route and say Latavius Murray. I mean, he's not coming back, right? That's an easy one. I think there are easier ones than Gabe Davis to say he's not coming back. I think Latavius would be one. I mean, Linval Joseph, he's not coming back. But those are the low-hanging fruit for me to choose. I understand why people choose Gabe and probably on that side of it. But boy, I do not put Daquan Jones as the most likely. I think fans want it, and I think Daquan would like it, but I don't know. I mean, that's a revolving door of a position for the Bills. They might want something different. Daquan tweeted out the other day, something like, hey, Bills Mafia, you know what I know. Have no idea like what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's super likely. I put Cam Lewis, Ty Johnson, and I would put another name ahead of Daquan at this point. I think Dane Jackson is more likely to come back just from what they view about that position and him being with the team for a while. Maybe he gets a Levi Wallace type of opportunity somewhere. I could understand that, but I think that's the kind of guy that I could see coming back for sure.
I actually think that Dane Jackson won't be back for that
Okay.
reason. Not for the reason you said. I just think for the Bills, how smart is it for them to pay that money to a guy who's going to be at best your third? I know that you'd like to have good depth, but I also think with the moves they've made on the coaching staff, Kyer Elam is going to be around for another year. And if Kyer Elam isn't your third cornerback, like, my gosh,
what kind of
what are you
money do
doing?
you think you're talking about for Dane Jackson?
Like, I think Dane is going to get a little bit more. I don't know, $4 million a year. Is that crazy? Isn't
I
that
think
like Levi?
Levi
Got a
close to that, yeah.
yeah. I mean, if it's less than that, if they bring back Dane Jackson, I will say I think it's a good move, unless the money is ridiculous. And it's for the counterpoint. I was basically trying to. I just think that with Christian Benford and Russell Douglas, and obviously no Trey now, you want a guy that you can count on.
Yep.
But once again, I'm kind of making the arguments against myself here. Why not just go sign Levi Wallace for like $1 million? And then you don't have to even think about this.
Listen, I think there's a chance Levi Wallace could return with or without Dane Jackson. I also think there's got to be questions still about what Kyer Elam is or is going to be. I mean, you can't count on that. Right now, who is your third boundary corner? It's Kyer Elam. How confident are you in that? But how confident are you in that?
I don't know. I'm not super confident in that, but I also think that if you're not confident in him being your third corner, then just trade him. Just move on at this point. What good does it do if he's on this team for another year and he's their fourth option?
I don't disagree. Put yourself in Brandon Beane's position, though. Do you really want it? He's not going to get anything. Mac Jones went for a 6th round pick. He's not getting anything for Kyer Elam. That's why you keep him.
Well, I think Kyer Elam is a sweetener in a deal. I don't think
I don't disagree. I agree with you.
I don't think that he's going to say, hey, I want a 4th round pick for Kyer Elam. But I think if Brian Thomas is on the board and the Bills are trying to move up, then it could be, hey, we'll give you our 1st, we'll give you our 4th, and Kyer Elam. And then that's one of the ways that you move up the board. I don't know. I think that for that, though,
like that
the
idea.
That to me isn't that valuable. I'd rather him be on the team and actually get on the field every once in a while, and then you just figure out what you have. Because I do think a new coaching staff will help him.
Matt, I agree with everything you said. I think, though, the only way you can do that is if you're confident enough with guys like maybe having Dane Jackson back or something. Like, you can't do it if you have nothing else. Like, they either have to bring guys like Jackson back or sign some people like him. Because I don't think you can make that move with Elam unless you have that.
Well, that's why I think Levi Wallace is perfect, because Levi Wallace will be cheaper than Dane Jackson will be. And that way, if you don't like what you're getting out of Kyer Elam, then at least you feel comfortable putting Levi Wallace out there without also having to pay him $4 or $5 million a year. Now, if I'm completely overestimating what Dane Jackson is worth, then bring back Dane Jackson. If it's close, bring back the guy who you've had, who you trust. But if it's not close, then I think you got to roll the dice a little bit, because all of this money is now this cap space is precious. They don't have a lot of wiggle room here. So as simple as, even if $4 million doesn't sound like that much more than 1.5 for Levi Wallace, that $2.5 million is 2 players. So they got to make sure that they're spending their money wisely.
Just so everybody's clear on the mechanics of everything, on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern is when the new league year starts. So every team must be under the salary cap. But that being said, once the new league year starts, you're allowed to have 90 guys signed to your roster eventually, but only the top 51 cap hits count. People always say, how are you going to stay under the cap with 90 guys? Well, because only the top 51 actually count. So just for accounting purposes and math, let's say you have a player, let's say your 51st person, everybody makes $1 million. And then you sign somebody for $1.2 million. All it's going to cost you is $200,000 on your cap, because you're just replacing the $1 million with the $1.2 million, and the other person gets pushed down. So it's not actually adding $1.2 million to the cap. It's just a it's a simple in and out for everybody. That's how that works. The other thing that, just for clarity's sake, all the players the Bills released the other day, Mitch Morse, Saran Neal, not Tre'Davious White, I'll get to him in a second. They are free to sign elsewhere right now, immediately. They are free agents. They were released out of their contract. Anybody who's a pending free agent, their contract doesn't end until March 13th. They can't do that. Tre'Davious White is a different case. Tre'Davious White will be a June 1st cut. Now, that said, that means only the cap ramifications start on June 1st, that's when the Bills get their cap relief. But Tre'Davious can start signing with teams on March 13th. That's when the team can't even do it until March 13th. They'll do it. That's what it becomes. So they don't get that $10 million until June, but that'll help sign draft picks too. But just so for mechanical purposes for everybody to understand, that's how it works. And that $10 million will come in handy in June, but it's not anything you can use right now.
What's a draft class? 4 million, 5 million, somewhere in that range?
About 4 on the cap for that.
About 4 on the cap.
Yeah.
So you can basically, Bills fans, on Wednesday, you can plan on probably right at 4:00, a couple additions being announced, like officially announced, even if we know about them that happened prior because of the whole legal tampering stuff. And the also release of Tre'Davious White will probably also be announced at that point. Did you see, somebody asked us in the comments here, so I just want to get to it. Did you see the Dawkins post, Dion Dawkins tweet?
I did see the tweet. I saw it when I was at the Sabres game the other night, and everybody's asking me what's going on. I don't know. You can read it, and I don't know what he means. I have theories, though.
I mean, to me, it sounds more like an extension than it does like him getting released.
Well, wait, why? Why don't you read it?
Well, it's like Buffalo will forever be home, right?
No. He said, please tell me Buffalo will always be home. Like, that's a promise or something. And then, but he has emojis of like a sad person walking.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at it right now.
Just promise me that Buffalo will still always be my home or something like that. What did he write? And I'm going to have my theory on this.
It says verbatim, Buffalo, New York is forever my home. Promise me that, with 2 emojis of people walking, sad face, and Bills Mafia. I almost read it as, it was his Instagram story too. That's where I saw it first, on his Instagram story. And then I went and saw it on X, whatever the heck we call it these days. To me, it almost was like a happy, emotional, like I read it as like that. Like, I think that he's going to get a contract extension and he's going to play his whole life for the Buffalo Bills, and they're going to give him a contract extension to free up more cap space, because that makes sense.
Do you feel that same way after looking at it now?
I don't think there's any way the Bills move on from Dion Dawkins.
Okay, but I'm asking you, what do you think about the post now? Do you feel the same way, that that's what he meant?
Yeah, I feel like it has to mean something, and I don't think it means they're moving on from him.
I think it's just Dion being emotional about the guys that were released.
Okay, that's fair. Mitch Morse, basically.
Him saying, yeah, please just tell me that I'll be here forever. Like, he wants to be. He's going to the last year of his deal. I don't think it's a happy I'm getting an extension post, but I don't think it means that they're moving on from him either. And I agree with you. Bills can't do that, right? They just got rid of Mitch Morse. You're not going to you're going to retool everything on the left side of the line.
No.
I mean, Connor McGovern's going to be the center, David Edwards left guard. I mean, Dion's still a really good player, and he's only 30 years old.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We've spent a lot of time talking about how this was the best offensive line that Josh has had, or one of the best offensive lines that Josh has had. And now you already took out who I thought was, really, really reliable and steady in the middle with Mitch Morse. I don't think if you're doing that move, there's any way you can also take out the left tackle in that equation and move Connor McGovern inside, and then put David Edwards next to a guy who's also learning the job or on the job for the first time. I don't care how much you like Ryan Vandermark or how much you like Alec Anderson or any of those guys. I just don't see that happening. So I think it's way more likely that Dion Dawkins gets a contract extension than isn't playing for the Bills next season.
I agree with you, but the post is kind of cryptic, and I just wonder what it means, right? That's what everybody's trying to debate.
It is kind of cryptic, but every NFL post from every player's always, it's the same thing as Daquan Jones. Not the same, but Daquan Jones being like, I don't know any more than you guys. Yes, you do. You absolutely do. You're saying that to try and prove a point or a leverage play. Same thing with Stephon Diggs. Like, when Stephon Diggs is tweeting these things, he realizes that there's going to be ramifications and people talking about him. They are smart guys. Like, they don't, it's all such a game.
And they have smart people around them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
team.
when Gabe Davis posted a 9-minute video thanking Buffalo. It's a leverage play. It's a way of reminding everybody out there, hey guys,
100%.
Gabe's going to be a free agent. Call him
Yeah.
up. And it's also a way of sending a message to the Bills like, hey, we're prepared to leave. We put out a thank you message. They all do it. Every single one in every sport, but especially the NFL.
All right, let's talk about a couple other Bills and some things that are happening around the league. Sal Capaccio, Matt Bove, it's always game day in Buffalo. Thanks for being with us here today. All right, let me ask you a couple other names, their chances. And I know that some people responded both to the more likely and less likely. One of them is Tyrell Dodson. What do you think about Tyrell Dodson's chances to come back?
I think Tyrell Dodson is going to get paid more than the Bills are willing to pay him to stay, because they would think of him as what? Their fourth linebacker, right? At best.
Maybe even fifth.
Exactly. So at
Because
that
I'm
point,
counting Alano Bernard, Dorian Williams, and Balin Spector, who started against the Steelers. They thought enough of him to start him over Dorian Williams, and he actually played pretty well for, I guess, looked like he's going to play pretty well for a few snaps before he got hurt, unfortunately. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's time to have a bit of a transition there, and they like these younger guys.
Yeah, I think so. I also think that this is just, once again, a money thing. I think that if they had a lot more cap space, a lot more wiggle room, they would like to, have the depth of Tyrell Dodson back. But now, if we were talking about signing a fourth or fifth linebacker, at that point, you just got to trust the guys that you've drafted or draft somebody else. I mean, Dorian Williams was a third-round pick. Dorian Williams should be getting a bigger role on this team next season, and I think he will be.
What about AJ Epinesa? Where his situation lies? I'll still say the ascending always comes to mind. I always hear personnel people say ascending player, descending player. He's an ascending player. Now you may think he's already plateaued. That's fine. He's certainly not descending to me. He's not old and declining. But I think that in the right role, he can be even better than he has been. He's not going to be we're going to game plan for him. He's a stud pass rusher. I think AJ Epinesa has gotten better, and he still has more that you could tap into. And I think that some team may see that, and that's going to be too much for the Bills to match. But I think he's a nice player to have back if the Bills were able to do it.
Yeah, his spot track evaluation is like $5.5 million a year. And at that price, I think that is a move that makes sense for the Bills, unless they plan on addressing this later in the offseason when they get a little bit more of an outlook on what their season is going to, what their cap situation is going to look like. I think AJ Epinesa is, I don't want to say the perfect third edge rusher, but a really good one. So if you're going into the season with Greg Rousseau, with Von Miller, and AJ Epinesa, I feel like you feel better about that group than you will if it's somebody who's not even on the roster right now, or Shaq Lawson or Kingsley Jonathan. With the unknown and the uncertainties of what Von Miller will be this upcoming season, I would think that they're going to put a little bit of an emphasis on getting another guy. He just might price himself out of being that guy.
All right, the NFL has. Is there anybody else in the Bills you want to talk about before we get some league matters here?
No, but I do want to end with some people who I think the Bills should be targeting in free agency.
Okay, 1 second. Then I want you to. Let me ask you what you thought about Chris Jones getting that massive contract from the Chiefs.
Man, remember when
$95 million over the first 3 years?
Yeah, remember a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago when somebody asked us what would be the pie in the sky if money didn't matter free agent signing, and neither of us immediately thought of Chris Jones, and then he went out and got that much money. Probably should have thought about Chris Jones. He's so good. He's worth it. He's a game wrecker. I mean, if you want to see a game where he directly makes an impact, even if it's not showing up on the stat sheet, it's the second last play from the Bills offense on the missed throw to Khalil Shakir, where Dion Dawkins is getting pushed into Josh Allen, and that causes Josh to have a bad throw. That's all because Chris Jones is exploding the line on that play. If Chris Jones isn't in the game, or if somebody who's less talented, the Bills probably throw a touchdown there. They still probably lose the game because the Chiefs go down the field to score, but it would have been a very different ending.
Baker Mayfield back in Tampa. Looks like he got more than I expected, but they really liked him, and good for Baker Mayfield, but I did not expect him. I mean, I had to look at the numbers. Pretty decent deal from what I remember reading earlier today, but
Yeah,
I
well,
didn't, I was not unexpected he went back to Tampa, but didn't know how much they want to spend on him.
what it made me think of with Baker Mayfield was how much money Tua is gonna get. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not saying that
What did
as I'm
Mayfield
not
get?
saying
Do you have the numbers in front of you for Mayfield?
I'm looking it up right now. Okay, 3-year, $100 million, 50 million guaranteed. So
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, starters.
once
You got
again,
you're gonna be a starter. You got to pay him starters money.
So at the surface, it looks like $33 million a year. I'm sure that that's once again highly incentivized, and there's a
Right.
lot of stuff that's going to go into that. But once again, if we're talking about on the surface, if Baker Mayfield is getting $33 million a year, what is Tua going to get? Because it's going to be a lot, and it's going to be more than Josh Allen, and that's not going to be a great decision.
No, that's right. And then the last one I want to touch on is the Mac Jones trade. Mac Jones goes to Jacksonville for a 6th-round pick. Here's the way I see it, Matt. We love to make fun of Mac Jones. Bills fans do. I get it. I understand why. I think Mac Jones is okay. He's not great. He's probably not a legitimate every game, every week, every year starting quarterback in this league, but he can start. He has started. He's done some nice things. The Patriots ruined him. They botched the pick in the first place. Shouldn't have picked him that high, and then they didn't really handle him well. For the Jacksonville Jaguars to get a nice a backup quarterback like that for only just north of $2 million this coming year in their cap after Trevor Lawrence was beaten up, this is a nice trade for Jacksonville. Good reset for New England to kind of move on from him. They had to do it, but I think this is a nice deal for Jacksonville.
He's also from there. So it's a
Yeah,
chance for him to get to go home and play for his
yeah.
hometown team. So that's kind of cool. It's a deal that is one of the ones that makes sense for both sides. For the Jags, you've got an insurance policy who you trust. Even if you don't like Mac Jones, he is certainly going to be one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. And for the Patriots, you have to turn the page. You just had to turn the page. So to get some sort of asset for him makes sense. This is probably the best offer that they could get, and they decided to move on.
All right, what do you got for us as far as free agents?
Is there any free agents that immediately jump out to you? I think I want to focus heavily here on 3 positions, which is not a surprise to anybody, but it's defensive tackle, it's wide receiver, and it's safety. At those 3 positions, is there anybody who you think, oh wow, that would be a really good fit for the Bills?
Yes. I would say at wide receiver, the 3 names that I've been most talking about, I would not come off of Darnell Mooney, Curtis Samuel, and Kendrick Bourne. I think those 3 guys I could see being targets of the Bills. Now, Kendrick Bourne is coming off an ACL injury. I totally understand that. But we also know guys can come back from ACL injuries. It happened last October. So it's not like he necessarily would be out for the whole season. And he might even, have to, who knows where he is right now, but that would be on your medical staff to determine that. It seems like everybody feels like he can come back and he's going to be fine. But I think Darnell Mooney would be a really nice addition. I think Curtis Samuel could fit in this offense for the explosiveness they need. And I think Kendrick Bourne is just an all-around good football player. That's where I'll start at wide receiver.
Yeah, I agree with every one of those guys that you said, but I also think there's tiers to those. I think Darnell Mooney is going to get a pretty decent contract, and that might price the Bills out of it. I think Curtis Samuel is probably going to get a pretty decent contract. That's why Kendrick Bourne to me is so intriguing, because I think Kendrick Bourne's contract might be something the Bills can fit. And if it sounds like he's going to be healthy and your medical team believes in that, I think that that's worth a swing for $4, for $5, for $6 million a year, because I like the player. We've seen him a lot over the last couple of years with New England. I just think that he is somebody who plays with juice, and I think he could be a nice addition for the Bills. I think that's a guy who you would feel comfortable having out on the field as your 3/4. I still think the plan needs to be Stephon Diggs, draft, Khalil Shakir / whoever you sign. And those 2 can be interchangeable. So I really like the 3 people that you said. Safety is the one that's interesting to me because the market is so saturated, right? Like we're sitting there, you were filling in with Jeremy this week, and I was listening on those days, and I heard while Justin Simmons got cut, I found out because I was on a walk, and you guys read the tweet from Adam Schefter, and obviously there's, Jeremy Chin, and there's all these other, there's Jamal Adams. There's so many guys. I still think, I've said it on the podcast before, Jeremy Chin would be an awesome addition for the Bills.
Agreed.
Because he's a freak athlete. I think they could use him a ton of different ways. I just have no idea what money he's going to get. Is there any other safeties who you think, like, they can't afford Justin Simmons, right?
No, but I'll tell you, would you want Jordan Whitehead, the guy that picked off Josh Allen What? How many times did he get him? Twice in that game? 3 times? In the
first
yeah,
game,
first game of the
3.
year. Yeah, he
I
did.
think
Right. So
3.
listen, that's not the reason why, but I think Jordan Whitehead's you would weaken a division rival a little bit. You'd help yourself. I think he's a good player. Um, a guy that could look at. I would love to get to Kyle Duggar. I don't think that's going to happen. I was looking at the list earlier. Let
Mhm.
me find him real quick. Hold on. There was somebody on here.
What
Oh yeah,
about
Darnell
Geno
Savage.
Stone?
Darnell Savage.
What about Geno Stone?
Maybe yeah, Geno. Okay, you go Geno Stone. You like him?
I mean,
Baltimore comes from
y-
a good system. Comes from a
the
good
list
coaching.
the list is just stacked.
I like
The
Darnell Savage is a guy they've tapped into Green Bay before with Micah Hyde, right? With Russell Douglas.
uh-huh.
They tapped into there. So that would be a guy. There's one more I was thinking of before we talk a little bit, and I can't remember necessarily, but go down the list.
Any
I don't know.
interest at
I
all?
was
Any interest at all in Jamal Adams?
no, not at all. I mean, not at all.
How
I
about
don't know.
so right now I'm looking at Justin Simmons spot track market value. What do you think it is?
Yep. 12 million a year.
It's 11. Would you pay
Okay.
Justin Simmons 9? 11 is too rich. Bills can't afford that.
I mean, maybe 9 if I could structure it right, but he's also a little older. He's been in the
He's
league
30.
a while. He's still
He's
right.
30.
He's played a high level, but I don't know if the Bills want to spend that kind of money on a safety, given what they're kind of doing here in the position. You know
I
what I mean?
think
they have
that if they make a splash, it will be for safety. I say splash with air quotes. I think that their draft plan will be heavily about wide receivers and defensive tackles, but I think given the importance of the position to a Sean McDermott defense, that they will spend money on a safety. I just don't know how much money. I think it'll be the person that they sign and Taylor Rapp, not Taylor Rapp and then somebody else. If you get what I'm saying.
I do. At defensive tackle, I'm going to give you an under the radar name for me. Okay, somebody
Okay.
I've been thinking about for them, and there's a connection and a reason why I do it. Now, he's going to be 30 years old this year. DJ Reader. DJ Reader, 6'3", 335, came from Houston, went to Cincinnati. He's a good player. He was in Houston when Brian Gain was in their front office, if you remember.
Okay.
That's when they drafted him. There's a connection there. And I just wonder if that's something the Bills might – hey, they've been in search of these kind of run stuffers who can play a certain role next to Ed Oliver. DJ Reader, to me, fits the profile, and you have connection there. I don't know how much he'd cost, but I think DJ Reader's an under-the-radar guy.
Who is the guy who visited from Jacksonville last week?
That was the Foley.
Okay, so he's obviously been thrown into the mix. I mean, I'm just looking at all these names. I really like the DJ Reader call from you because he has given the Bills problems over the years when he was with Houston.
Yes.
And then again when he was with Cincinnati.
He was really big in that playoff game against the Bills.
I keep thinking back to that. But I look at this list and I think, oh, well, Daquan Jones, right? And I know that it's not a foregone conclusion, but I don't know. If I'm the Bills, if I'm Brandon Beane, and let's say I have $15 million of wiggle room, I think I'd rather give Daquan Jones 6 in a safety 9 than give DJ Reader 12 and go get another guy who is like Taylor Rapp. I just think that maybe I'm just building the team wrong. Maybe I need to be putting more of an emphasis on defensive tackle. And then I could make the argument that you do the complete other way and you take all the money you have and you give it to Christian Wilkins and you say, okay, Christian Wilkins and Ed Oliver. That sounds like fun.
I wonder what some of these guys get. I know that Spot Track has their own valuation, but a lot of times that's, very different than what actually winds up happening. And I wonder, and then you look at defensive tackle, you look at Chris Jones' deal, and what does that do to the market? I mean, I know it's special, but what does that do? Obviously, if you're a pending free agent defensive tackle, you're loving that deal for Chris Jones because that might push everybody up a little bit.
We also, do you see Fletcher Cox retired Sunday?
I did know there's something going on there. Was it a retirement? Is that what it was?
Yeah, Fletcher Cox retired. So in the matter of a week and a half, Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox both retired.
Wow. Change in Philadelphia. All right. Before we go, so yeah, we got my laptop I told you about, and then we're just kind of doing some things, cleaning up and fixing around where I do the podcast and all that. My son Max, who's 10 years old, was cleaning his room, and he's like, "We put this." I didn't realize this till just now. He's like, I don't want this anymore. I'll put it here. And I didn't realize I was not celebrating Jack Eichel today, but he put a Jack Eichel bobblehead on my shelf right here. And that's what this is. And that I feel I'm not going to have, I'm putting this away. I'm not rooting for Jack. It's not even a bobblehead. It's a little figurine though. He wore 15. Did you ever get one of these?
Do you, if is there a team in the NHL you would root for if the Sabres aren't playing? Is it the Oilers?
I'm going to root for the Oilers. Zach Hyman, Bills Mafia. Got to know him a little bit. Saw him after the game last week. I'm going to root for Kyle Oposo, I think. I have no reason to not root for Florida. Sam Reinhart, I would be totally fine with them. To me, those are the two teams I'll root for in each respective conference. I'll root for the Panthers and Kyle Oposo and Sam Reinhart, and I'll root for the Oilers and Zach Hyman.
I think I would root for Colorado. I like it. I always really liked my interactions with Casey Middlestad over the years, so I would have no issue with him going and having success. At the same time, though, it's annoying to see teams that have already won recently win again. I want nothing to do with Vegas. I don't have any issue with what they do with their cap circumvention and the things. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I love that their general manager doesn't care and tries to do things to make his team as competitive as possible. So much respect to that. Don't want to see him win, though. So I would say Colorado out west, and then in the East, nobody. I really like Kyle Oposo, but I don't want to see Florida win. So at that point, don't care. I guess I'd just rather have a Western Conference team win, or the teams in the East are so blah. Like, obviously, nobody in the Sabres division, anybody around here is going to be rooting for. And then the teams in the Metro are just so uninteresting. I guess Carolina is kind of fun, but I still have those thoughts of a 12-year-old in 05-06 who despises the Carolina Hurricanes. So it's hard to get those things to get out of your head. So yeah, I guess go Western Conference hockey teams.
I tell you what, though, going to that game the other night, other afternoon, Sabres and Oilers, it's just different hockey, man. It's crazy. It's just different hockey.
Yeah, well,
watching that team play.
Sabres still won. They still got a chance. It's not a good chance, but they still got a chance.
I love it. I love it. It's a great way to end this pod. All right, next time we talk to everybody, the Bills will have some more changes, and we'll kind of walk everybody through that. Want to thank our producer here, Mike Rabier, always doing a great job. Don't forget to check us out both on audio, if and when you can. That's wherever you pod, and on video at the Sal Sports YouTube channel. All right, Matt, you ready for a frenzied week?
I love this week.
We might get called to the One Bills Drive for some press conference or something. Whenever we don't even know when that is.
I remember when they signed Vaughn. It was right after the 6 o'clock news has ended. It was on the first day of free agency. Do you remember who the other big name pass rusher that year was that the Bills were tied to kind of a lot?
Yeah, that was hold on, he had been in the league a long time. Chandler Jones.
Yes, so Chandler Jones. So Chandler Jones ends up signing his contract, and I think that was a bummer for a lot of Bills fans because at that point they weren't even considering Von Miller.
That's right.
That wasn't even on somebody's radar. So I remember I was at the station. I had just finished the 6 o'clock news. I was going to get some dinner. I was going to go get some chicken souvlaki, and within minutes I got a phone call. The Bills are signing Von Miller. I was in the car. I said, "What? What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Get back to the station right away." So it happened in between the 6 and the 7 o'clock newscasts. We got it onto the 7 o'clock, and that was just chaos. I mean, I think you could have made the argument then that was the biggest free agent addition the Bills have ever made. Now, knowing what we know 2 years later, it's certainly not shaping out to be that way. But at the time, that was – and it's also something to be thinking about now because Brandon Beane is not scared to make the big move.
That's right. That's right. We'll see if there's any big moves ahead. For Matt, I'm Sal. Thanks to Mike Robbie, our producer. We'll talk to you next time on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo.